Hello again, it's Outroads, and today I'm sitting down with good friend Cazzy Cereghino, who's from a distinctly different walk of life. He's a working actor's working actor, also stuntman, commercial fisherman, musician, novelist. Suffice to say, he's got some layers to him, despite this video montage showing roughly one. We talk the unglamorous side of film, sacrifices made in pursuit of craft, and that one time Cazzy slept in a bucket of fish guts. Let's get into it. Thank you for coming down.
Of course.
I know it took you, what, an hour 20, you said?
Well, that's what Google said, but it only took me an hour. I got to shave the extra 20 minutes off because I was on a motorcycle.
Right. You pulled up in the gorgeous Harley. I was kind of ogling it out on the drive.
I don't know if it's gorgeous anymore. Like I said, it's I got it in 2008, so it's been, what is that, 16 years, 17 years I've had it now. And it's been in some wrecks. It's been beat up.
Has it?
Oh, yeah.
With, I assume, when you were driving it?
Both before I had it and since I've had it. The guy that I bought it off of was a tow truck driver who picked it up off the road. The guy who before me died on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did that freak you? Did you know that when you purchased it? Mm-hmm. That you were buying a Ghost?
That's why I got it so much cheaper.
Jeez.
The whole front end was destroyed. I had to, redo the whole front end in order to make it work.
I wonder if it's, when you buy a house, I mean, I have never bought a house, but in theory, people that buy houses, you have to be informed legally if someone's died in the house.
Is that right?
Yeah, it is.
I didn't know.
I don't know if that's state to state, but I know at least in California, they're legally bound to inform you before the purchase goes through if someone's died in the house. So I wonder if it's the same with Harleys.
Now, is that something that realtors have to do, or is it something that if you're buying it from
I don't know.
I mean, because I bought my place from the previous owner, and he didn't say anything about it.
Right.
But then again, I mean, I don't even know if he knew.
The Ghost Association will move from real estate to bikes. Yeah, I had a little Kawasaki for about a year. And the first thing I thought of when I saw your Harley is, if you lay it down, can you lift it? Because I laid mine down twice, and I had to be able to lift it on my own. You're much bigger.
One of the first things they tell you about when you go through the motorcycle training, if in order to get your license, you can get you can forego the DMV tests if you take this motorcycle course. It's like a 3-day course.
Right.
And that's one of the first things they tell you is don't buy a bike that you can't pick up if it falls down.
But aren't there bikes that no one man can pick up unless they're enormous?
No.
Look,
it depends on the human being, depends on the person, but there are certainly, like my bike's over 800 pounds.
Yeah.
Picking it up would be a difficult task, but you're not picking it up.
You're not picking up 800 pounds.
Yeah, it's a fulcrum. You're picking up, you're putting it back on its wheels. If it's laying down on its side, you're not picking up 800 pounds. You're picking up, a portion of that.
How heavy do they get? For standard bikes,
some bikes get really big because they've got the whole fairing on the front, and a lot of them have, with you add on the saddlebag. Yeah, I mean they can get 1,000 pounds or more.
Oh my god!
But again, you're not picking up 1,000 pounds. I've had it happen. Like I went to Sturgis one year with my dad's buddies, 6, 7, 8 of those guys, and one of them had real bad Parkinson's, and he was having trouble still continuing to maintain his clutch and so forth, and he dropped his bike and couldn't pick it up.
Yeah.
I went over and a couple other guys went over and we helped them pick it up. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't have other people with you, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So it's one of the things they advise you to do before you buy a bike is don't get something that's more than you can handle.
Don't bite off more than you can chew. Yeah. I think that's exactly what happened to me. I think the whole bike was more than I could chew.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I took it out. I had a car at the time, so it wasn't a commuter vehicle.
Right.
It was something that I wanted to do, I guess, for fun, which in a way is more dangerous because you're not getting your kicks just traveling. At night, I was going to like the Malibu Hills and riding those windy roads, being a new motorcyclist.
Right.
And I was told by my friends who were really good at riding, it's just putting in the hours. Just you got to put in so many hours before you're confident. Yeah. But I wasn't putting them in a parking lot. I was putting them in the Malibu Hills. Mm-hmm. And twice, I laid it down twice. I could pick it up, but it scared the shit out of me, laying it down in the middle of the road.
Right.
And twice I had close calls at night where if traffic didn't play my way, it would not have gone well. I got lucky.
Right.
And it honestly, I had it for about a year and a half. And at some point I said, look, I'm uninjured. I'm alive.
Right.
I don't need this anymore.
Right.
I don't think this is part of my lifestyle. I think this was a moment in time. I'm going to get rid of this damn thing before I get used to it and get hurt.
What people don't realize is that you ride a motorcycle differently than you drive a car.
What do you mean? Aside from the obvious.
Well, aside from the obvious is a big portion of that. But you don't ride a motorcycle the same way that you drive a car. For example, if something pulls out in front of you in a car, what do you do?
In the motorcycle?
No, on your car. What do you do?
You'd hit the brake probably?
Yeah, you slam on your brakes.
As opposed to weaving around.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I slam on the... Look, you rode a motorcycle for a year.
Yeah.
What happens if you slam on the brakes hard?
It doesn't go well.
No. If you have a light bike, if you have a street bike that's made of porous aluminum and plastic and fiberglass, most likely if you slam on the brakes hard, you got a higher center of gravity because you sit higher on street bikes. You probably have the back end come up and you're going to launch yourself like a Superman over the handlebars.
Right.
If you have a heavy bike like mine, if you slam on the brakes too hard, it's like, the back end weaves and then you lay it down, you lose your leg. So it's like you can't slam on the brakes hard. And so you're always factoring that in when you're riding, that I'm always looking for escape routes. Now, this is something you don't understand until you start riding. I didn't. I just thought, when I moved here to California and I saw these bikes going between cars. And then once the light turned green, they had to get a big head start. I thought these guys are just being punks. They're being jerks. They're doing that because they want to show their bike off.
Oh, but you're saying it's safer to get away from traffic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if let's say I'm driving in 3 lanes or in 4-lane traffic or something, and a ball rolls out in the street or a kid runs across the street, anything where you have to slam on your brakes. If I'm in between cars and they all slam on the brakes, where do I have to go? I have to hit what's coming into the street. If it's a kid, if it's a car, whatever it is. If I'm driving or riding my motorcycle like a car. But if I'm getting out in front of everybody else, and now the ball or the car or whatever is pulling out, then I have an escape route.
Right.
I'm always driving looking for escape routes or riding looking for escape routes.
So this reflects on a lot of my hobbies, but it's not motorcycling. But in some ways, the increased risk means that you have to be more aware.
Oh, yeah.
And as a result, you're kind of more present. Right. You're enjoying more. You're more involved in the activity.
So what did I tell you before I came over here today?
That you'd shave time because you're on a bike?
Well, no, I texted you before I left and said, it says here it's an hour and 20 minutes. Right. I just want to let you know this is about my ETA. I let you know ahead of time because I'm like, I'm going to drive for an hour and 20 minutes, but I can't text you. I can't call you. I can't take a phone call from you if you call me. Right. Because I'm on the bike.
Oh, so it's a more immersive, demanding experience.
When I'm riding, there's nothing else going on. A lot of people are like, oh, I put my music on when I ride. I'm like, no, why would you do that? I want to be able to hear everything around me. I want to hear honking. I want to hear if there's a car, rearing up on me. But I also want to hear if there's anything going wrong with my engine, if there's something going wrong, if I hear a flap of the tire or something, I want to know that ahead of time.
So you haven't gotten inured to it yet. It hasn't become total. You haven't become so comfortable with the act that you're blind to the risk.
I ride in Los Angeles.
Well, yeah, that's true. Driving in Los Angeles.
It's not like I'm out, I hear people say all the time, like, oh, yeah, I'd get a motorcycle if I lived out in the country. And I'm like, I'd probably more likely get in a wreck if I lived out in the country.
Because you wouldn't be as aware.
It's just so easy to get tuned out.
Complacent.
And then people will pull out from a side road because they're doing the same thing. There's like, I know it's 12 miles to town, so I'm just going to pull out on the road. Oh, there's a motorcycle there.
This is I see this as a whole life philosophy. Like the more demanding, the riskier thing, but the more reward because you remain present. You don't become an automaton as we can. And actually, this kind of leads into why I wanted to talk to you so much, because I'm fascinated by unconventional choices, unconventional lifestyles for exactly this reason. And I've been through a number of them myself, even though now I'm kind of seem like I'm in the straight and narrow. I've lived wildly many times, and I think that there's a real benefit because it keeps you on your toes, it keeps you appreciative, it keeps you aware. But I want to ask you specifically about this transformation, and this is part of what fascinates me about you. I think at first we've known each other peripherally for a number of years. We've worked together a couple times. We have a bunch of mutual friends. But every time I learn a little more about you, just in passing, it feels to me like the proverbial onion. Like you're a really unexpectedly multifaceted guy. But visually, at first glance, you'd be easy to write off as a character type. And I know that that's part of what you aimed for initially. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when you moved to LA with the intent specifically of becoming an actor, I know you used to.
I didn't come here to be an actor.
You did not?
No. I went to Nashville before I moved to LA, lived there for a few years and played music. Right. Came out to LA because Nashville has every type of music, but they really only mass produce country and gospel. Yeah. I didn't really feel like my music didn't fit in either one of those. I liked folk rock, kind of like you were telling me about earlier. I liked the Dylan. I liked the Neil Young. I like old style folk rock, and that's what I was playing. So I came out to LA kind of for a more open, broad spectrum of music. Acting was something that kind of, I almost want to say to some degree, fell in my lap. I wrote songs. I'd published over 700 songs, and then I started working for a casting director, and he was consistently getting scripts. And I was looking at some of these scripts that were being made into movies that he was helping cast. Some of these aren't very good. I could write better stories than this. I'd already written stories and songs, but they were 3 minutes long. So I started expanding. I'm like, I'm going to start writing screenplays. And then as I started doing that, I'm like, I could even expand on these stories more. I want to start writing the novel based on these stories. So I started writing novels.
I know you've written 12 plus or something.
Yeah, I've got published right now. I've got 14 of them published.
14.
And
staggering.
Well, at the time though, when I was writing them, I was having the difficulty that every writer has is getting them published.
Sure.
So I went and found a talent agency here in Hollywood that it was across the board agency. They had voiceover, they had theatrical, they had commercial, they had print, they had, but the one I wanted was the literary department that represented writers. I wanted to get in there and get my novels sold and get my screenplays sold and so forth. And the guy, his name was Mickey Freiberg. And, I went in there and interned. I ended up interning there for 3 years for free. As an unpaid intern, and tried to get my book sold through Mickey. Was always trying to pitch, doing intern work for him. But then of course, while I was there, I was working for the other departments. Well, little by little, the print department came over and said, yeah, you got a really great look. Now this is again, like you're talking about the body transformation. I was clean shaven. I was fit, very lean and short cropped hair. And
right. Just to clarify, you used to be like a speed runner. You were a miler. Right?
I was a long distance runner, yeah.
Right. So that's a completely different body type and lifestyle than the way you appear now.
I also played other sports, but my one that I was naturally really good at was long distance running. And I hated that. I didn't hate that I was.
That's the joy of running, hating it.
Yeah, well, I didn't hate that I was good at running. I hated that, like, my older cousins, my older brother, my older brother's buddies, they had a nickname for me. I was Concave Caz because my chest wasn't just flat. It had the divot in the middle, and I was super skinny. But even by the time I got to the same height I am now, I was like 125, 130 pounds. So the body transformation also kind of came as a result of, like, I played sports and I was really skinny and I didn't want to be skinny. I wanted to get bigger. I wanted to get stronger. And so I started lifting. Now, lifting, obviously, I started putting on more weight, and that made my long distance a little more difficult,
right?
Because you can't have extra weight when you're running. But yeah, I mean, I got into the talent agency, and the print department came over and said, "Man, you got a really great look. Would you be okay if we started submitting you on some print job auditions?" And I'm like, well, I'm not a model. I don't have any interest in being a model. And they're like, well, why not? I mean, you get paid to have people take pictures of you. Okay, well, sure. They started submitting me on jobs. Well, the commercial department came over and said, you've got a really great look. We'd like to start submitting you. Maybe if you'd be interested in some commercial gigs. Well, I'm not really an actor, but okay. And I did. I fought it. And then the theatrical department did the same thing. And I'm over here doing their headshots for them and doing their, the rejection letters and so forth. But really, I'm trying to get in with the literary department. Before I knew it, I got representation by every other agent in that place, with the exception of the literary agent. He did do well, but it took 2 or 3 years, and he actually got one of my novels published, and he got me on my way to getting other ones published before he passed away. He was a great dude, and it actually worked out really well because the music industry and the publishing industry have really been struggling more and more over the last, 10, 12, 15 years. Whereas artists now, musicians wise, if I wanted to make a living doing that, I'd have to consistently be touring. It's not like it was 25 years ago when I got in the music industry, where people were still making money on album sales.
I have to imagine there's very few musicians or novelists that from the beginning do it for the financial incentive at this point. Either it's a calling and you have no choice. I still to this day play music, and I still to this day write books because I like to do it. Right. But I found a long time ago, I'm not going to make a living doing it. It was a blessing in disguise, because acting I can still make money doing. If I get booked to do a movie, a TV show, a commercial, if I get booked to do some stunts, it's like it's a union job and I'm still getting paid to do it. I'm like, and it's fun. I'm getting paid to do dress up and make believe. Right. And you get to do characters that, in real life I would never do. I always tell people one time I played the leader of the Hells Angel biker gang, and I burned a couple teenage girls alive in a car. That's lovely.
I would
Lovely, Cazzy.
never do that in real life.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, I'm glad you clarified that.
You should hope so, right? But again, it's like, those are the kind of things that, you're getting paid to do. You're getting dressed up and make believe.
Right.
The kind of stuff like when you were a little kid and you got to put on different costumes and act like a goofball. And you're like, people pay me to do that. And I get to travel around the world and do that for fun.
But committing to being an actor requires a certain lifestyle, right?
Absolutely.
It requires, I'd have to imagine, a set of sacrifices and a commitment to the long haul with a certain way of living.
For the same reason, like you just talked about with the writing and the music, you do it because you absolutely adore it. You love it. When I'm working, my friend Gons, he's also an actor, and he had once made a great quote that I reuse all the time. He said, "It's the greatest job in the world between action and cut."
Yeah.
Which it is. Between action and cut, when you're actually getting to do the act of dress up and make believe, it's fantastic. But the reason that most people can't stick with it or can't do it is because getting to the action or the time after the cut is so incredibly difficult. Like you just said, it's a lifetime commitment. You're not just taking on a job that you go to from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, like a standard job, and I'm getting paid a standard salary. It's like, no. There have been years I did really well and I made 6 figures getting to work for 10 days a year. But there's other years that I didn't make 5 figures.
Right.
And you do the math on that. 5 figures means you're making less than 10 grand a year.
Yeah. Yeah. The instability is tremendous.
The instability is absolutely tremendous.
Was there a moment when because when we're young and, we're excited and motivated and we have this absolutely unchecked belief in our potential,
right,
which hopefully doesn't entirely go away, but we're not as in tune with what the day-to-day reality of a life choice will be. I know this happened with me in the music industry. And then at some point you reach an age and you see the road ahead clearly for the first time. And that's a crossroads.
Yep.
And then either you commit to it or you say, that was fun, I'm ready for something else. Did you have that moment where you realized what you were committing to and you made a hard decision?
I don't think it was a one moment thing.
Yeah.
I think it's been years and years of fighting for cake.
Fighting for cake.
When I say cake, every one of us, no matter how wealthy you are, no matter how successful you are, every one of us gets 24 slices of cake every day.
Okay.
You either get to keep it, have your cake, or you get to eat it. But you can't have your cake and eat it too, right?
Sure.
I don't care how wealthy you are. I don't care how successful you are. Every one of us has 24 hours in every day.
Yeah.
And it's been a long process over 25 years of realizing like, man, if I do this, I'm probably going to have to give up this, or I'm going to have to do less of this. And that is something that we all fight against. We all like, I can have my cake and eat it too. And I still hear that from people. And I'm, I want to be in the entertainment industry and I want to be an actor. I want to be a model. I want to be a singer. I want to be a director. But I also want to, have a really good, stable family life. And I want to get married and I want to have kids and I want to live, in Connecticut. And you're like, yeah, I don't think so.
Those two are kind of mutually exclusive for the most part.
Sorry, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, no, I see people all the time. I've watched interviews where people, they get to be a giant, big actor and they also have, a great wife and kids and family life. And it's like, okay, well, here's the deal.
This is the exception, not the rule.
Well, here's the deal. You get to see what they show you, obviously, but you're also, sometimes some people are more fortunate than others and luck and so forth. But to the most degree, even those people have had excessive moments where they're, oh gosh, this is my career and this is my personal life.
Yeah.
And I have to at times pick one or the other.
Oh, I think that's very true. I think that's very true. I think it's a form of marketing and advertisement, even with wealth or celebrity or people who are incredibly successful and they present themselves as family men or mothers of many. And at some point you say, it just doesn't make sense. There's only so much resource to spread about.
Right.
And if you're running these companies, you can't be home with your kid in the same way.
Right.
No matter how successful you are.
Again, 24 slices of cake.
Yeah. Time is the great commodity.
Right.
Yeah.
And most relationships are successful as a result of time spent.
So you're mentioning relationships. Have you found that the sacrifices of this lifestyle, obviously there's tons of benefits and, you're like a vibrant artistic soul that's being fed through your lifestyle, but have the sacrifices you've had to make along the way been as expected or have they blindsided you at times where you didn't realize quite what it would take and now you're in it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're far more than you think they are before you get into it. Far more. But, I mean, I would have loved to have had kids.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have got married. I found both those things. Every time that I got close to those things, every time I got close to getting married or had a relationship, that the better the relationship got, the worse my career got.
Yeah.
And vice versa.
Wow.
That, and people will consistently, well, you just weren't with the right person. You were with the right person. I'm like, it doesn't make any difference. You're still, the more success I got career-wise meant the more time I was putting into it, the more time I was being flown out of town to go film this or film that, meant less time with this.
Sure.
Less time with the relationship, less time working on the house, the family.
Yeah.
And vice versa. The more I put into this, the more I started when my agent sent the audition. And I was like, oh, I'll get around to it. I'm taking her out to dinner right now. Or, we're working on painting the house, or, just like, again, 24 slices of cake.
Right.
And I had to eventually, I came to that place where I'm like, look, I really like what I do. And
how close were you to like the conventional wife, family, kids?
Very close.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow. You were right on the fringe, and then you decided to steer to the left.
I don't know if I steered to the left as much as life presented decisions where you had to make a choice.
Yeah.
And I don't live with regret. What are they from the old Wonder Years? I love the Wonder Years, the old TV show, and Kevin Arnold once said, "No compromises, no regrets." I didn't, I guess to some degree, I didn't compromise and go, full Monty. I didn't take the whole step into saying, okay, I'm ready to, I was engaged, but I didn't actually walk down the aisle because I realized I'm like, this is already going in that way. And I'm looking around at all my peers, and I look around at, my siblings and so forth. Many of them have very successful relationships. My brothers are great examples. They have fantastic relationships. My sister-in-laws, that married my brothers, awesome gals. And I'm appreciative that they've got 11 wonderful kids that I get to enjoy now. I've got 11 nieces and nephews, and they're like, they're totally my pride and joy. They're awesome.
Yeah.
But I also kind of get a little bit of the cake and eat it too there.
Sure.
Because I get to go home, and they live all in the same place. My mom and dad live on the same piece of property as 8 of the kids. And one of my brothers. How many
siblings do you have?
I have just 2.
Just 2.
My older brother's got 3 kids, and my little brother's got 8.
8.
So I get, again, like I say, cake and eat it too, because I get to go home and do fun stuff with the kids.
Right.
And when I'm home, because again, I don't have my own wife, I don't have my own girlfriend, I don't have my own mortgage, I don't have my own rent, I don't have my own car payments, any of that. It's like I get to go home and kind of whatever I've made, I get to go home and be like, hey, I'm going to go spend it on the kids. I don't need really anything else to spend it on.
Yeah, that's your fatherly outlet.
It is. It's like I get to go home and they call me Funkle Kaz. And I get to go home and take them to ball games or take them camping or take them and do that kind of stuff. And it's like, I get to still have that little bit, but they also know that like, oh, Uncle Kaz got a call.
He's got to go.
He booked something that films in Florida. He's leaving tomorrow.
But I think there's many different ways that people can fill these needs, in the same way that you can fill the need to give fatherly love and guidance with being an uncle. Right. I think the reverse is probably true. There's people who've chosen confining and conventional lifestyles that can fill the need to seek adventure and challenge in their own little ways.
Right.
But in the end,
but you do have to have the ability, if you're taking that other route, to still choose your priority, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, you're right. You're still living for one.
Right.
One
ultimately
motive.
Like my nieces and nephews have gotten very good at understanding, like when Uncle Kaz has to leave, he leaves.
Right. It's almost like
I couldn't do that.
It sounds like the scene in Heat. Where,
yes.
Right.
I recite that all the time.
Do you? Where he says something about,
you should be able to drop everything in your life within 10 minutes.
That's it.
And walk away.
When the heat comes, you have to be able to walk away.
Like, for example, I have a situation this week.
Yeah.
Where I'm going to avail for a job that shoots out of state.
Okay.
But I won't know probably till Thursday night. Mm-hmm. Well, Thursday night, I also am hopefully maybe leaving to go out of town to go on a vacation with my brothers, to go watch a college football game with them and their kids this weekend.
Oh.
But that also, I'd have to leave Thursday night.
Well,
So I might have to go to the airport,
Right.
not knowing which flight I'm going to take.
Oh, that's crazy.
Well, it's my life though. And
I don't mean that negatively. It's thrilling.
it's thrilling, but it makes me completely unable to have a relationship.
Yeah.
And it makes me completely unable to be a father because, I don't want to be a deadbeat. That's basically the reason.
You don't want to be an absentee
I don't want to be an
father,
absentee father. And I had such incredible parents that were always there and incredible grandparents and aunts and uncles and cousins. My family is just so close knit. I never wanted to be that same. I never wanted to be the opposite of that. And so I've basically made the choice to say, like, I can't have kids or get married because I don't want to be a person that is flaky.
Yeah.
People in the entertainment industry, we are flaky. And not because we are flaky people, but because essentially, the old adage, well, you're just going to choose me until you find something better. Something better comes along. It's like my whole life is waiting on something better to come along. You asked me to come in here and do your podcast today, but if Quentin Tarantino called this morning and says, I got a role in a movie and we're filming it today, I'd be like, sorry, dude, not coming today.
So what is that like? Always, like, if every day is leaning forward toward the prospect of some possibility that may open, as opposed to what a conventional life would be, where you're sitting back into the comfort of predictability and stability. I'd have to imagine that when every day there's this bit of an unknown, that's a double-edged sword.
It is.
Like, there's the joy of hope and thrill, but then there's also the constant need. You're always seeking something that you rarely achieve, right? And that can cut back.
Did you ever watch the movie Parenthood?
With Steve Martin?
Yeah.
Of course.
And then the old auntie comes in and she talks about some people when they went to the amusement park, they loved the roller coaster. It was up and down and up and down. And some people go get on the teacup ride. It just goes kind of round and around and around.
Actually, I get sick on the teacup ride.
Well, either way, it's like there's the difference of you want the big ups and downs,
Right.
or you want the steady.
And is that how it's been for you, the big ups and downs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why do, most people in the entertainment industry struggle with depression? It's like because we have these giant ups and we have these giant downs.
I was talking to a good friend of mine he's in his, I believe, his 80s now. And he was a renowned poet in the 70s, never stopped. But he straddled the gap. He got married. He went to college later in life. He's now a professional while he's still a poet. But I was talking to him and he looked at me and said, "Oh, you look like you've got it pretty balanced. You've got a wife, you've got a kid, you have things stable, but you're still an artist. You're still living for your writing and your mountaineering and all these things. I've been a musician. I've never worked in the corporate sector. Or when I have, it's been disastrous. And I said to him, yes, but sometimes it feels like a bit of a front that I've mastered, and there's still like a degree of madness to it. And he looked at me, and this is a man at the end of his life. He's in his mid-80s. He talks about how he's wrapping things up now. And he said, I've never met a writer. And he meant that as an artist, but he said, I've never met a single writer who doesn't have madness in him that he's always working to contain, him or her. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that resonated with me. Again, like we were talking about the myth that we're presented of the successful CEO, multi-billionaire, who's also a great mother, a great dad.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
So the same for the price of creativity to a certain degree. Like you said, it's the up and the down. It doesn't matter if you're hustling on, what's the name of that? Actors Access. So it doesn't matter if you're hustling on Actors Access or if you're Brad Pitt. If you're living this life, there's going to be some amount of turmoil and conflict within you. I can't quite identify why that is. Maybe it's just the creative process, or maybe it's the egoism of caring so much about your creativity, right? Maybe when we live for others, we suffer less, and some creativity is kind of self-focused. We're working on ourselves all the time. What do I have to say? What am I feeling?
Right.
Yeah.
That's why we get the label of being self-centered. We get the label of being all about ourselves. It's like, well, essentially my job is marketing myself.
So, the nice thing is, though, I think to some degree, when you really dig down to any type of art, it's about transcending yourself.
Sure.
It's about getting rid of your ego and the facade so that you can do the art. And it doesn't seem that way from the outside, but there's a slight selflessness to it where you just want to inspire other people by singing really well, or by becoming a character, or by writing a novel that transcends time and space and could speak to a kid in 30 years and move him. So while the ego says, and that's why I'm great. Really, I think there is something beneath that has nothing to do with the self. You want to do some good in the world.
Yeah, exactly. What did Neil Young say? The same thing that makes you live is what kills you in the end.
Which song is that from?
It's off his Harvest Moon album.
Oh, yeah, that's a famous one.
Yeah.
But if you were talking to your younger self, the one that was kind of deciding, that maybe the first time you hit that crossroads, the first time you hit the crossroad, whether you were deciding to just prioritize freedom in your life so that you could pursue all the wild things you've done, which we haven't even touched on yet, but the acting, the ability to pursue your art, to create a life that is all exploration of the unknown. And you were at that crossroads. What would you tell your younger self now, having lived these 20, 30 years since then?
I'd probably laugh because my younger self wouldn't have paid any attention to me. My younger self I was a respectful kid.
Yeah.
I was respectful. I'm like, oh yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
But it was a front.
It wasn't necessarily a front. It was that, like, I was so confident in, like, that's not the way it's going to work for me.
Right.
I'm going to do it differently.
Look, one of the things fatherhood's taught me, and I haven't learned it the hard way yet, but I'm becoming aware you can't make other people's mistakes for them.
No.
You know?
Nope.
Like all the crazy decisions I made that I hope to God my daughter doesn't, because I don't want to live through it as a parent.
Right.
But no one could have allowed me to sidestep that. I had to make my own mistakes.
And what did you learn off of it?
Everything.
Right.
Everything. And it strengthens you. This is the great constant dichotomy of being a parent, that you know that the suffering you went through gave you meaning and depth, and you want those you love to have meaning and depth.
Right.
But you don't want them to have to suffer to get it.
Right.
Right.
Maybe what I would tell myself then is, hey, I'll see you in 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. We'll talk then.
Yeah. Because I know that he probably wouldn't have listened or done what I'd asked. I mean, I think of all the things that I look at as failures. If you look at it in the scheme of what the world considers a success and a failure, and I look at them now, I'm like, that wasn't a failure. It was something that I needed to have happen. Like, for example, I had a couple really big roles.
You've had a bunch. Your career is storied.
Well, I mean, I had a couple ginormous roles that would have changed the course of my life.
Okay.
And like, if I had got some of those when I was young, and instead of them going to somebody else, if I had booked this or booked that, then I could have been, young and had tons of money, for example, or had tons of fame. And I look at myself now. I mean, if I'd, given that to myself 25 years ago, I've been like, oh, great. Awesome. I'd love to have that. And of course I'll be good with it. I look at it now. I'm like, no, I know what I would have done.
What would you have done?
I would have done what I'm fighting against now, the whole cake and eat it too. I would have been like, I can totally have my cake and eat it too, because now I just booked this movie role where I am the new, whatever, hypothetical, I'm the new Batman.
Yeah.
And I just got, paid $20 million to do a film, and everybody in the world knows me now. So I've got the money and the accessibility to get married and have kids. And I would have done so thinking like, I can have both my cake and eat it too now, because now I got the money where I can pay people to do stuff for this, for me. And I'm going to be able to have the ability to do both. And I look at it now and I'm like, I still didn't realize then that no, you still, no matter how successful you are, you still only have that same 24 slices of cake. But me as an 18-year-old kid, or however old I am when you're saying I'm going back into talk to myself, would be like, I know how to do it better than that.
Well, you said something interesting. You said that if you couldn't have had the success back then. And I've had this thought myself that, tell me what you think of this, that the gift of failure is change. I've done a ton of things in my life that didn't succeed to the level that I anticipated because, I was starry-eyed and had untrammeled belief in my abilities and all that egotistical bullshit that we suffer from. But every time I did something, it was a fantastic experience.
Yep.
And every time it finally, I'll say failed, which just means ended, right? It wasn't going to grow forever.
Yep.
I hit the ceiling and the experience was over. It happened to me in music. It happened to me in film. And I realized looking back that they each prompted change, that the gift with each failure was the ability to continually move forward, reinvent yourself, survive and grow. And I've also thought about, the old cliche of the successful child actor being emotionally stunted. And that's because they reached success and it cemented them into their psyche.
Sure.
You know? So does it feel that way to you that with the constant need to survive, adapt, and change comes constant growth? I mean, you have so many layers. We haven't even touched on the fact that you were, and this still fascinates me, that you were a commercial Alaskan fisherman amongst all this stuff, right? That you have the experience in not only acting, but as being a stuntman, that the athletic, that you went from being a long distance runner to having this wildly imposing physique. These are all, in a way, breaks with the past where you're reinventing yourself, right? And if everything is perfectly hunky-dory and padded with success, there's never a reason to break with the past. You just keep on going.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's always interesting that the people who've, in a way, done the most, who have the most, perhaps have failed the most because they continually need to keep evolving and changing.
To some degree, yeah.
Yeah. That's how it seems.
Most of those things you just brought up came as a result of failures and other things.
Which, you mean the physique as well as the fishing?
Yep.
Tell me, please.
Well, I mean,
how'd you find your way into becoming a commercial fisherman, which is notorious? It sounds thrilling to me, but I'm a nutcase. It's notoriously dangerous, notoriously demanding. How'd you find yourself there?
That literary agent I was talking to you about earlier.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get my book sold to.
Yeah.
After moving the furniture in his house and in his office for him,
okay,
he was going to try and offer me money. And I was like, I don't want you to give me money, Mickey. You don't understand. I'm working for you because I want you to read my books. So he finally agreed to read one or two of them, and he read them and was like, this one's pretty good. This one's pretty good. Trouble I have with it is that, you don't have a name. It's like, like my other clients, he started listing names off, and of course they're all people that
right,
big names. And he's just like, they can write garbage and I can sell it because it's their name. Because you have some good stories here. He goes, but I think what you need to do is you need to go out and you need to live some of these stories. I'm like, well, I have lived some of these. He goes, no, I don't know. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? I'll go do a missionary trip in Africa, or I'll go run with the bulls in Pamplona. He's like, no. Hemingway already did a story about that. You can do a missionary trip anytime.
We're all copying Hemingway.
He's like, I've got a better idea. I want you to get on a commercial fishing boat in Alaska.
Oh, he tasked you with this?
He's like, write me a story about it. Come back and write me a story about it.
And that was your 116 Days with Dad, that book, right? Yeah.
That's actually the first one he helped sell. But he just, his son was doing it as well. And he's like, maybe go with my son. And, but I was just like, don't you have to know somebody? Like, I can't just go up there and be like, hi, can I get on your boat?
How old were you at this time?
25, 26, something like that.
Wow.
And it worked out really well because being in the entertainment industry, most of us are starving actors, starving artists that have to make a living doing something. But, you can't get a steady job. So commercial fishing actually worked out really well because for 6 to 8 weeks while you're out to sea, I can't go to any auditions. I can't do anything.
But you're forced to be dependable because you can't leave.
Well, it's not just that. It's like, if we have a good catch, I can come back with enough cash where I don't have to work for the next 6 to 8 months. Sure. I could just go in doing my auditions without having to worry about,
it compartmentalizes things nicely.
Right. It's like 6 to 8 weeks you're out to sea is horribly hard.
Were you already a bodybuilder? Were you very strong by then, or were you still?
Yeah, which obviously was something the captain liked too, because you're like, hey, you're able to do a lot of physical hard work and you have to lift, and pull lines and so yeah, I mean, I'd consistently gained weight and gained strength. I started lifting when I was 13. And so young. Every year I continuously gained a little bit more. That's why by the time I got to halfway through high school, when I started, long distance running, I kept gaining weight, and my track coaches are like, you need to stop gaining weight. You need to stop lifting weights because your times aren't getting any faster. You're getting bigger. You're having to carry a lot more weight around. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also playing football. I'm playing baseball. I was wrestling, and they're like, those are sports where the coaches are like, we don't want you to be super skinny and we want you to get stronger. This is great. You're lifting. I enjoyed all of them. But I didn't want to be super skinny. Yeah. And as I got bigger and as I got stronger, it's like there were other avenues that opened up,
Do you feel that there's what's like the body soul connection there? If you've gone from being skinny to being tremendously muscular, do you feel that that's purely aesthetic and sport, or do you feel like it changes your character? The way you carry yourself is different because you're now a different person.
Well, I'm not really a different person. I probably wouldn't be nearly this big if I didn't continue to lift and eat all the time. The biggest thing is eating. Right. I mean, I'm eating.
By the way,
10,
I learned
11,
that
12.
story. We shot a commercial together that I was producing and directing, and we did a reshoot on a green screen for a special effects shot with you. And you were this size. You were taking your bodybuilding very seriously. And it was supposed to be just a 2-hour quick pickup, and I had no food. I'll never forget this. I learned such a lesson. And you were like jonesing for drugs. You were like, there's no food here. I need to eat. And we did, all right, let's do another one. And we do the shot. And then you pull me aside and you're like, you think we're going to get some food here? And I said, I'll try. It was like, it was a small crew for this pickup, shoestring budget. But I'll never forget, I couldn't get food in time. Yeah. And I remember kind of watching you just wither, like hour to hour, where you were not getting what you needed. And I never took it seriously until that experience. And that's why now I've got all the snacks lined up.
Well, that's good. I actually have meals in my
saddlebags
in my motorcycle. I don't go anywhere without food.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like everywhere I go, I've got my big gallon jug and I've got my food with me. And it's just one of those things where, now that I'm in my mid 40s and people are like, you should lose weight. It's probably, it's not healthy.
It's for holistic body.
Well, it's like you're 320 pounds. Why is that? That's not going to be good on your heart. It's not going to be good on your joints. And I'm like, but you don't understand though. So much of it is at this point for my work, casting directors that I've known for 20 years, they know this look.
Is that restrictive for you? Because like I said, you're a guy who's constantly reinvented himself, who prioritizes freedom over everything. So to be told that this very regimented lifestyle is yours, whether you like it or not.
I do like my freedom over everything. That's true. But remember, I did make the choice to lift and to get bigger.
Sure.
It's not like I'm going against what I want to do. It's just one of those things that, yes, it does restrict me in the regards that, yes, I have to take food everywhere I go. I do consistently have to eat.
Are you one of those guys that wakes up in the middle of the night to down a protein shake? I've heard people do that.
No, I'm actually the opposite. Like, as I've gotten older, I'm very appreciative of this, but I didn't like it when I was younger.
Yeah.
I can sleep through anything.
That's a great
I'm one of those kind of people that if I go to sleep,
you'd make a good fisherman.
I'll sleep for 10, 12, 11, 12 hours. No, I make a terrible fisherman because of that.
Why? Because then when you get it's just like being a soldier. You get your window to sleep and you got to use it.
Yeah.
Right?
But when you're that tired, when you're working as much as we do when we fish, everybody sleeps. It doesn't matter. You're sleeping. You're sleeping standing up half the time. I'd sleep in brailers. I'd sleep in fish blood. I'd sleep laying down.
Sleep in fish. How do you sleep in fish blood?
You just lay in the brailers that are filled with blood.
What's a brailer?
A brailer is basically a giant.
Is that the gutter?
A giant basket that the crane comes down and picks up out of the boat that's filled with fish. But you lay down the bottom of it, it's gonna be filled with blood and guts and slime and fish. And if you're tired enough, you don't care.
It's a baptism in awful.
To some degree, yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
how many hours a day do you average when you're on the boat?
It depends. Totally depends how many fish there are.
Oh, I see. So when you're catching, there's no breaking.
If you keep catching fish, why would you stop?
What's the longest you've gone without sleep on a boat?
There have been plenty of times where we went through tides right into the next tide. Like normally what you would do is you'd get depending on the style of fishing you're doing, it's different. Like when I would do cod, when I do long lining with halibut, or if you're doing jig rigging, or if you're doing salmon, which is set netting or drifting, they're all different styles of fishing, but a lot of times it's based on the tide. But yeah, really it depends on if you're catching fish or not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And if you're still catching fish and you're still cleaning your nets out and you're still cleaning your brailers out and the new tide's coming in and your nets are filling back up again, you just don't sleep. You just go right into the next day and keep on working.
God, it sounds cool. Look, I was a kid.
Sounds great, but it's terrible.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's one of those things that
you got to love to suffer.
I'm really thankful that I did it when I did.
Because you're done now.
Because if I were to go back now, I would be miserable.
Yeah.
Like, again, we talk about when I sleep really deeply and I'll sleep for hours. There's a lot of times I go to bed. If I fall asleep at 9 o'clock, I look over at the clock and it says 11. And I'm like, oh, I only slept for 2 hours.
It's 11 a.m.
And it's 11 a.m. I'm like, no, I didn't. I slept for 14 hours.
I suffer from the opposite issue.
Do you?
Yeah. I was on a climb with a buddy. We spent 5 nights in the High Sierra and we're waking up at crazy hours. We started in the desert and it was going to be 110 during the day. This was the summer. So we started at 3 a.m. and we had driven in at midnight. So we got like 2.5 hours of sleep and we started the first day. So by day 3, your sleep schedule, your circadian rhythm is blown.
Right.
And waking up alpine starts for these climbs. We had a car shuttle, so we had to make it out a different place than we started, and we were trying to hit all these objectives on the way. And I remember night 3, we go to bed, we get in our tents around 7.
Right.
And we're supposed to wake up at whatever hour it was. It was early, like 4, 5. I go to bed. I sleep so deeply. And I was worried because I was so exhausted. I didn't know how I'd do the climb. And I wake up. I can barely wake up. I've slept so long. I look at my clock, 8 a.m. Both of us slept through our alarms. I scream out, Jason, Jason. It's just starting to get light. I go outside. He wanders out of his tent, bleary-eyed. He starts, taking a pee by a bush. And I said, it's 8. And he goes, yeah. And I said, we slept so well. Do you know how many hours we just slept? And he looks at me, he goes, do you think it's 8 a.m.? He said, we just got in our tents an hour ago. It's 8 p.m. The sun's going down. And I remember I felt like I had dementia. I was so wildly disoriented because I thought I had gotten such great sleep. So yeah, I have the opposite issue. I can never sleep. It's always a struggle.
We had a wonderful guy on our fishing crew that had a similar situation happen where he went from being so excited to just completely dejected.
Yes.
We were fishing. This was during salmon fishing. And so we're fishing on a tidal change, and tides are once every 12 hours. So you get a high point and a low point once every 12 hours. You get these tide books up there. We didn't have any internet. We didn't have any telephone or anything to get that. So we just had this old school tide book, and we got a break, and these guys came back off the boat and they were going back into the cabin, and they were so thankful to have this break because we had worked really hard. We'd worked mostly through the night, and they were talking about, like, we're going to go down to the cannery. We're going to get a shower. Maybe even be able to call our wives, because they're like, we got 13 hours off. So we're thinking 13 hours off, because Captain had said we're going to go back and start fishing again at whatever it was, like 8-foot tide or something. So they looked in the tide book and they're like, we don't have another 8-foot tide until 1 p.m. This is like at 11:15.
Okay.
11:15 at night. Like, we don't have one until like 1 p.m. the next day. And so they're thinking, we got 13 hours off. We're going to get a full night's sleep. We're going to get 8 hours of sleep. And we're going to shower, and we're going to call our wives. They were so excited and like, yeah, this is awesome. And
all that cake.
Captain's son came in and he's like, we're going back out at 8 foot. And so like, yeah, we got 13 hours off. And he's sitting there going like, he looks at the tide book.
1 a.m.
He looks at the tide book and he goes, but it can't be, because there's a tide the tide's only 12 hours long. At 6 hours, you get a high tide. The next 6 hours, you get the low tide. There's no way you can get, how do we get 13? How does that work? What had happened was, because the tide one day, whatever it was, the 8-foot ended at 11:15. The one of the next day happened to be past midnight. So it was on the next page. So they're thinking they got 13 hours off. He's like, you don't have 13 hours off. You guys got 45 minutes off. We're going back to work. We just did like a 20-hour shift.
Oh, no.
Instead of getting 13 hours off after a 20-hour shift, you got 45 minutes. They went from like, you can't do this to people. You just did a 22-hour shift. We can't go back and work in 45 minutes. I just got the wet clothes off. And they were just...
I have to imagine that's when the accidents and the injuries happen.
It's not only just when the accidents and injuries happen. It's when people just want to quit.
Oh, really?
And they're just like, I hate this. This is the worst job in the world. Let me out of here. It's like, how are you going to get out of here?
Yeah.
Well,
no,
the nearest town...
You're impressed.
There's not even a road to the nearest town, and it's 15 miles away.
You're a galley slave.
And that road there, and that town there that's 15 miles away, there's no road to get there. But once you get there, there's no road that goes back to civilization for 300 miles.
Yeah.
Where are you going to go? I mean, if you quit, Captain's like, fine, you want to quit? It's fine, but you're finding your own way out of here.
Right. It's like maritime law. He just tosses you off the edge.
No, he just drop you off at the dock of the cannery and be like, fine, find your own way home.
It reminds me a lot of a soldier's tour of duty in a way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're so removed,
absolutely.
You're so isolated, you're under such intense stress, and then you come back to a life that probably feels very foreign, and you're trying to pick up the pieces and figure out who you are now.
I always had the weirdest time coming back.
You must have.
But me personally, I didn't serve in the armed forces, but to some degree, I always felt like I could liken it to it because the camaraderie that you develop with the guys that you're with out to sea, very much similar to the camaraderie you develop with guys in the military. Because like we're sharing bunks.
Yeah. Tight quarters and
tight
high
quarters.
risk.
And yeah, it's like we are depending on each other for our lives every day because you're putting yourself in predicaments where it's like you fall into the water, you're probably not coming back.
Ooh.
Not only is it super cold, but you're wearing, either waist high or chest high waders that as soon as you go in, they're filling up with water and you're an anchor going to the bottom. And a lot of times the sea gets rough and you're having to reach over the outside of it a lot of times. And, people lose fingers, people lose arms. They get it caught in the machinery or they got it caught between, slamming boats or against the dock or whatever. It's like, it is a high risk, high reward job. Yeah. It's one of those things that I wouldn't be able to do now. I'm glad I did it when I was younger. I'm glad I got the memories. The guys that I did it with, I still, we get together and it's like no time has passed. You can have those conversations that unfortunately, like nobody else in the room can be involved with it because they're like, I'm kind of listening, but I don't really get it. Like you can't.
Yeah.
It's like, this guy here, went overboard and he was going to die. And this guy here grabbed him and pulled him out of the water. And we all laughed about it. And you're like, he almost died and you laughed about it. It's like, well, you had to be there.
There's a certain type of bond that comes from those extreme situations.
Right.
Yeah. And there's a joy to reliving it with those that can really sympathize.
Right. That's why you have the guys that were in the military. They go to the VA and they're able to have discussions that the rest of us are like, well, that sounds cool. And they're like, well, yeah, but you weren't there.
Right.
You had to be there.
Or guys who become career enlistees because they don't really know how to reintegrate when they come back. Sure. Did you find that with fishermen as well? People who just can't deal with the mundane nature of domesticity.
Plenty of people that they just have to continue to go back and do
I'd
it.
imagine. Yeah.
And a lot of them have to go back and do it because they don't understand how to have regular, steady incomes. Meaning like, hey, fishing season's over. Here's a $30,000 check.
And then it's blown.
And then, 2 weeks later, they're like, I need another job, a lot of money.
Yeah.
What happened to the money you got 2 weeks ago? Well, I went and bought a new car and then I wrecked it because I bought a whole bunch of beer and I was like, oh man,
Was it hard to come back from the simplicity of not only Alaska, but the ocean, the boat, that communion you have with the outdoors and nature? I have to imagine it's a lot like what I go to the mountains for, and to come back to LA of all places and the entertainment industry of all places.
I've always said, if I weren't in the entertainment industry, I would have never come back from Alaska.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so did you fall in love with that place?
I adored it.
Really?
Yeah. And then, there were a few years that when the season was over, I would go into a different season, a different style of fishing, stay up there for cod season, or I'd stay up there for crab season, or stay up there for halibut, rockfish, or, one of my captains, my salmon captain, got me a job at the national park. So I was like, great. I could do
Which national park?
Katmai.
Oh.
Which is the largest percentage of brown bears in the world. It's where you see all the bears, standing at the falls where the fish are jumping up the falls. And, and of course, it's so incredible to be there.
That's where they have all the chubby bears.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
they're
the thing
very proud of.
Season gets over. I mean, summertime is great in Alaska. People go to Alaska and like, oh, I love it here. I want to move here. But then when, summer's over and winter sets in there, not a lot of people want to stay there.
That's a different game.
It's a whole different game. But for me, that was the best.
Yeah.
Because everyone would leave. And all of a sudden, I'm like, this is like being in this place. I mean, for example, like Katmai is millions of square acres. Huge national park. And when everybody left, there was like 5 of us left there working. We had like 1 million square acres and only 5 of us there.
Yeah. You just divide it up evenly.
I mean, it's just like to be in a place where you're that sparsely populated was.
It's like going back in time.
It is like going back in time.
Right before the population exploded.
I the first couple times I went up to Alaska, I'm like walking into, some of these restaurants. I'm like, everybody here's like got a gun on their hip. Like it's the 1880s and
you can see
old
that in
Tombstone.
Texas.
And you're like, what in the world? Well, you can see it in Texas, except, Texas has connecting roads.
Fair.
They have stoplights. They have, population. You're in a place where it's like some of these places I would fish at, they don't have connecting roads. Like you'd have to take a float plane to get in there, or you'd have to wait until summertime when the ice broke up on the Arctic Ocean and take a boat around to get to it. And, I remember being like up in the Arctic where they'd have, if they wanted to order supplies to build a house, let's say it's November, you order your supplies to be barged in August.
Yeah.
We're living in a world now.
There's
It's
no
like,
Amazon Prime?
I'm going to go ahead and call Amazon. I'm going to order something on Amazon. I'm going to see if I can get it today or tomorrow.
I did that yesterday, and it's coming today.
And they're like, we'll get our stuff in August. I'm like, it's November. And they're like, how are we going to get up here before then?
Were you working during the winter, so you just stayed up there?
Yeah, that's what I said. When I got a couple of those years where I got to stay there in the winter, I was like, this is really a whole different animal.
Yeah, what kind of fishing do they do in midwinter up there?
Well, crab is November, usually through February. Cod is usually like January through April. Same thing with rockfish. And I think they start first with the cages and then they shift over to jig rigging when they get, when they meet quotas. The fishing game is really good up there as far as trying their best to make sure that we get fish continually coming back every year.
Yeah.
Seafood. And so would I have probably come back to Oregon where my family's at? Yes. But I probably would have, been able to spend my life up there in Alaska if it weren't in the entertainment industry.
Let me ask you, do you think it's by chance that almost every aspect of your life that we've discussed has a fairly large amount of risk involved? I mean, from riding the motorcycle to fishing to the financial or emotional risk of committing to the entertainment industry, all of these kind of highlight risk, instability, the excitement of the unknown. Do you think that that's an intentional choice that you've made, or it's something that you're drawn to by nature, or it's just the way life turned out for you?
Probably more of the way that life turned out. Would there probably be some subconscious decision on my part to do that? Yes, but I'm seeing more and more the benefits of stability as I get older. And I think it will continue to progress more in that direction. And obviously that happens with most people. As you have less and less tread on the tire, as I get older, I see myself a lot more frequently thinking, I don't have to do the burnouts now. I don't want to do the burnouts or drive fast or brake hard because I want to maintain the tread I still have.
Do you mean in terms of physical health?
Physical health, but also, taking the big risks that I did when I was younger.
Are you referring to like the stunt work?
Stunt work is definitely a big reference in what I'm making.
Yeah.
It's like 20 years ago, they said, hey, would you crash a motorcycle? No problem. Cool.
Is that the way it works? They'll just present you with an idea. It's up to you to figure out how to do it safely.
No. You have coordinators and you're doing the choreography and you're figuring it out if that's something that could even be feasibly done. But, when I would see submissions and breakdowns for stuff, oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. Now I'm more like,
oh yeah,
I probably could do that. Do I want to do that? And most of the time when the adrenaline's going, when I'm in the middle of the scene, no big deal. It's when tomorrow comes and I'm like, oh gosh, it's hard to get out of bed now. Mm-hmm. I didn't have that 20 years ago.
Yeah. Those things add up.
They do add up. And so that's not just with doing stunt work. That's with, you're talking about risks, the risks I would take when I was younger. I've told you over and over, I wouldn't want to do commercial fishing now. Mm-hmm. We had a guy that came up one year that used to be an NFL football player. Great NFL football player. So you're thinking he could do commercial fishing, no problem, right?
You would think so. Robust.
The guy's a big, strong dude. Mm-hmm. He trained with the greatest athletes in the world. And he got up there and, he might have been a great commercial fisherman if he were 20 years younger. But he was in his mid-40s when he came up. Mm-hmm. And he was toast after a day or two.
Well, just general wear and tear?
He needed more recovery time.
Yeah.
He's just like, I can't close my hands. He's like, I'm beat up. I'm bruised. He needed recovery time and he wasn't getting it.
Yeah. I find as you get older, you can still achieve the same heights. You can still do the same things. They just cost more.
Oh yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
They cost more.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why my risk ratio is much lower now, is that if I'm doing this all the time, well, here's a likely, I've had gigs before where I broke bones and so forth for free.
Ooh.
Or doing jobs that paid $100 or whatever. And it's like, as when you're younger, you're like, cool, that's all good. I could tough it up. And I did. I worked through it.
Can you give me an example of one of these? Just because,
okay.
Stunt work is kind of this black box to people on the outside that's just like fishing. It's fascinating.
So do you remember the show Operation Repo?
It's a reality show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, it's a reality show.
It's a scripted reality show.
Exactly. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and I didn't have a Mercedes. But in the show, my girlfriend and I's Mercedes is getting repoed.
I see. This kind of reality.
That kind of reality, exactly. But on the show, I'm brought in as a big scary guy.
As you are.
The character on the show, Matt, who actually is a friend of mine now, Matt Birch, he's the guy that would always wear the suspenders and the bald head and wear the glasses, look like a biker himself. And he's supposed to be repoing the car from this girl, him and his partner. And the girl is my girlfriend. And well, I come out being like, what's going on? Mm-hmm. And of course, the producers are like, we want you to get really angry and go after him, go after their truck. And of course, I'm kicking their truck and I'm beating it, like, put my girlfriend's car down now. So then, of course, they're going along with it and laughing at me and getting their truck and driving away. Producers are like, what we want you to do is we want you to chase after the truck and jump in the tailgate, jump on the truck or jump in it. So like maybe thinking like, I'm going to ride back to the repo yard and get my car and bring it back. So they're behind the camera, like telling me, giving me the instructions on like, go chase after the truck, go jump on it. Matt's in the truck and he's driving it real slow, 10, 15 miles an hour, slow enough that I can race on foot and catch up. Well, I go and I jump, trying to jump into the bed of the truck. Well, the tailgate's not latched. So it falls open and I go bouncing off Laurel Canyon Boulevard, broke my foot.
Did you?
Yeah. And man, my bone was kind of pushing out the side of my foot. Man, it hurt so bad. And of course I wanted to, not say anything while I was there on set. 'Cause I want to make sure I, get called back again. I don't want to be that stunt guy that gets hurt and then, production has to pay for it and so forth. So I didn't say anything. I just kind of, man, that really hurt my foot. And I went home. My problem was I had to film a national commercial the next day, Super Bowl commercial.
Oh,
I wasn't going to miss that, but I'm playing a professional wrestler. I'm having to jump off the top ropes. My bone's sticking out the side of my foot.
I mean, did it break skin? No, you just big lump.
I could see. I could see the bone.
Yeah.
So my friend Carlo,
there's a finger poking out of the sheet.
My friend Carlo, he kind of pushes it back in, and he tapes it up really tight. He's like, well, we can go to the doctor, tomorrow after you do your shoot.
That's medically advisable.
But when I put my wrestling boot on, I put it on as tight as I could make it go, so that I wouldn't swell out, and went to set the next day. I kept my boot on all night. I slept with it on. And then, put the wrestling outfit on underneath it and over top of it and filmed the next day. Well, of course, the director, they've got the camera angled up on me when I'm doing these top rope jumps. And I keep jumping off the top rope and doing like the full spread, elbow drop, like laying out. And he's like, Cazzy, we don't even see you landing. He's like, we got the camera angled up on you. You could just jump, to the side and jump out of the way. And I didn't want to tell him, like, dude, my foot's broken. I can't land on my foot. Yeah. I will scream and cry. I don't want to tell him that because I'd lose the job. I mean, I'm expendable. I'm not Tom Cruise. I'm not Denzel Washington.
Right.
If I have a project right now and I get hurt or if I can't do it, they're just like, oh, no big deal. We'll get the next guy that came into audition.
Right.
The other big, scary, burly guy that, the other 600 dudes we brought in here with big beards and big muscles. You do. You go in when you go into castings, it's like you look around the room, you're like, everybody here looks like me.
Yeah. It's a funhouse mirror.
It is. So I'm like, I know the next guy in line, the guy that's on avail right now, would love to do this because then he'd love to get the payment that I'm not losing this because my foot's hurting. Big deal. Suck it up. So all day long, I was doing the top rope jumps and I was doing the full spread and landing on my side with.
You're going to break a rib trying to protect your foot.
Because I didn't want to tell him my foot was broken.
Right.
So I just had to keep sucking it up. And he's like, Cazzy, we don't even see you land. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? I'm getting the right angle and I'm really putting my motivation into it. I said, I'm trying to do this so I can really,
the character really wants to land
looking authentic. He's like, all right, it looks cool. Keep doing it if you want to keep doing it. Oh yeah. I don't mind. I don't mind laying on my side. I don't mind doing flying elbows. No, it's all good.
Well, let me ask you, Cazzy, your acting means a lot to you. The entertainment industry is a huge driving force in your life decisions. Uh-huh. You've done incredibly well in it. And you have all these elements of your life that play toward the character you book, the physique and the bodybuilding, the beard, the motorcycle. If tomorrow you were no longer an actor for whatever reason and never to be again, which of these things would you immediately let go of?
Well, if I were no longer to be an actor,
No
as
longer
of
an
tomorrow,
actor. Yeah.
I wouldn't live in Los Angeles.
Yeah, that's who would?
Would I let go of where I live? Probably. Would I let go of the motorcycle? Probably, to some degree. As far as the long hair, as far as the beard,
Yeah, the beard, the physique.
I don't know.
Yeah.
The beard is one of those things that, to some degree, it's booked worked for me, but it also came because I'm just my facial hair grows fast. If I shave in the morning, I had stubble in the afternoon.
Sure.
I'd be so lazy. I want to shave all the time, and I don't want to have to manicure, and I don't really care. I mean, the first time I really grew the beard out big was when I was commercial fishing.
Right.
Because we'd have 6 to 8 weeks out to sea, and the only people you see are the dudes you're in the cabin with. They don't care. We weren't showering. We all smelled. It's like.
But this is kind of what interests me. Like, I don't consider, I'm not an actor. I dabbled in it because I was eager to be creative when I was younger.
Yeah.
But there's something about the actor where there's this duality, and you mentioned it yourself. It's like the persona and the person. And I have to imagine when you've been living in the industry as long as you have, with the success you've had, can you tell them apart, or does the fabric just intermesh? One becomes the other.
I think that one was the other even before. I think to a lot of degree, I haven't really swayed too much into the realm of I want to try and do this to get, trying to change who I am in order to get more work.
Okay.
It's been more along the lines of the other way. Like, I like to try all this new stuff anyway, things I've never tried. But if I try it and then essentially I get to use it for work, I don't know if I'll ever get to use it for work or not. But it's like, I play 18 instruments.
You play 18 instruments?
Yeah,
I can't name 18 instruments.
But I started doing that because I wanted to, put different, noise and different songs and so forth into the tracks. That was when I was recording different music. Even though the guys that I go into auditions, like, they're the same types as me, like the same guys that are the big burly bearded guys or whatever. It's like, I get a lot more auditions for other things. And they're like, well, wait a minute, how'd you get in this one? I didn't get called on that one. I'm like, yeah, but they were also, looking for people that that were fluent in sign language. They're like, oh,
Are you fluent in sign language?
Well, yeah, I just did a movie. Where I had to, use sign language. And again, it's like just another thing that you can use.
Cazzy, us mere mortals are trying to accomplish one or two things. I mean, like 14 books, 18 instruments, sign language, fishing, bodybuilding, physique. I have to say, I'm sure there's been a lot you've given up, but in this pursuit of freedom, you've accomplished so much. You've experienced so much.
Well, I'm not good at any of those things. What's the old saying?
They're just on the resume.
I'm the master. Actually, I'm the
Jack of all
trades, but the master of none.
This is what I meant when I opened by saying it's like you're an onion. Like, I keep hearing these other layers, and it'd be so easy to just discard you as like a brawny bodybuilder motorcycle guy.
Sure.
And I that's probably true for any walk of life we're unfamiliar with.
Absolutely.
We attach a stereotype to it and simplify it and discard it. And it's a good lesson that's rarely the case.
Sure.
And the way people got to who you see on the street is usually long and circuitous.
And to some degree, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you can look at me and say, hey, you're an onion. I'm finding these other layers. The other side, I'm also trying to correct you and be like, I'm not good at most of those things. I really am. Some of them are just like, I'm doing them to be well enough to, get in the room and get the audition, because you never know what casting's looking for. And maybe.
But in the end, when the door in your career closes, these are still experiences you carry with you.
I hope it never closes. I mean that. Like, as an entertainer, like, people are always asking, like, well, how many more years are you going to do this?
Yeah,
when are you going to retire? I'm like, why would I retire? Why would you retire if you really like what you do?
So you can move to Alaska.
No, I'm not going to move to Alaska when I'm 80 or 90 years old, if I even make it that long.
Yeah.
I'm not Dick Pernecki. That guy, you remember that guy?
I have his book.
Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic story.
Yeah, he's a survivalist who lived off the grid in Alaska, and his diaries and journals were published recently.
And he built his own cabin by his own hands up there and lived in the wilderness for 30 or 40 years. Perhaps. That looks awesome to me.
But he didn't book a lot of gigs on Actors Access.
But that's the thing is, no, he didn't. And you can't have your cake and eat it too.
No, you cannot.
As much as I want to live out in the wilderness by myself, I can't be an actor and do that.
I think this is the great lesson. Just that in the end, we are going to give things up. We will not be good at everything. And if we accept that earlier on, we can forgive ourselves for all the flaws and commit to the things that we can find success in.
You asked me a moment ago, like, how? Like, how? Wait a minute. You can do this. You can do this. We're us mere mortals is what you said a moment ago, right? And I'm over here thinking, like, I have no wife. I have no girlfriend. I have no children. But at the same time, like, I have the freedom. I have no mortgage. I have no rent.
Right.
I have no car payments. I think I mentioned this before. I'm like, but I also have no plants. I have no pets. I even took my yard out and put fake
My
grass
daughter
in.
has a hamster. You're not missing much.
Well, I mean, I took my yard out and I put fake grass in.
Okay. Yeah, that says something.
We flew to Hawaii a few years ago. My family, my mom, my dad, my brothers, my sisters, all the kids. First family vacation going back to Hawaii, 29 years. We did it 29 years ago when my brothers and I were all little small kids. And 29 years later, we went with the whole family, booked it all, got a house. We could all stay there together, flew to Hawaii, got off the airplane, turned my phone on.
No.
Got a booking.
Oh, no, I didn't even, you set it up and I didn't see it coming.
And I was just like, oh, come on.
Did you turn around and go to the airport?
It's like, it films tomorrow in Los Angeles. I just landed in Hawaii and my whole family's, it's one of those things like,
do I need to ask what you did? I know what you did.
What did I do?
You went to Los Angeles and filmed No, you canceled it.
So this is, an opportunity to be with my family.
Oh, good for you.
Well, you say good for me, but that commercial ended up running for ended up running for like 2 or 3 years.
Oh,
and that's kind of one of the things that people have always said, you've been doing this for so long. How come you're not gotten any more success? I'm like, I think to a lot of degree, my biggest obstacle has been me.
But you've given everything for this.
No, I haven't.
No?
No.
Fake grass, Cazzy. Fake grass.
Fake grass.
No hamsters.
Pets, no pets, no plants. But that wasn't always the case. Most of the years, that's only where I'm at right now.
I see.
Most of the years I've been in the entertainment industry, I had those conflicts and I always was like, well, I should take my family first. Or I should take the girl I'm dating first or the person I'm engaged to or take my personal obligations over the professional ones. That's the right thing to do, right? It happened to me yesterday. I had a friend sends me a couple text messages. Hey, this girl is single and she's really, she's perfect for you. She's a great fit. And I just said, I'm not interested. Mm-hmm. Why not? She said she liked to meet you. She looked at your pictures. I'm like, I'm not interested.
You're clear on your priorities now, though. That's got to be a weight off your back. You don't have to suffer the constant guilt and vacillation.
But that takes time.
Yes.
And when I was younger, I was more along the lines of like, I want people to like me. I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be mean.
Cazzy, I'll offer you something that's a reverse. There was a while, now it's different because she's older, but there was a while where I had some kind of weird personal guilt that because I'd committed to being a very present father in my daughter's life,
right,
I'd sacrificed my development as an artist, my chance to succeed as a writer and all these other things that I was pursuing.
Right.
And in the times where insecurity would strike, I would feel like, well, it's my fault.
Right.
I didn't put it first.
Right.
So both sides of the coin are susceptible to the same self-doubt. And I think what you've described, this journey you've described where you finally get to the point where you're clear that you've made your decision, you don't need to justify it to others or yourself, and you can now move forward kind of unhindered by that constant guilt. I think that's the lesson to be learned.
Sure.
There's no right or wrong decision.
Right.
There's a right or wrong way of making these decisions.
Right.
And once you've done it, that's who you are,
right,
and respect your decisions and move forward with confidence. Yeah.
And that's where I've come to.
That's a great lesson.
That's where I've come to. Is just like, you know what? I don't have to be conflicted with the decision.
Exactly.
If there is no decision.
Exactly.
To make.
You're writing your story and you're writing it in your own hand and you've got to own that. Yeah.
Nothing in life that is worth doing comes without time, without sacrifice. And I guess to some degree that is my sacrifice, is that I've given up this possibility of a domesticated life because I really like doing this.
Yeah. Well, Cazzy, I'll be honest, I still see you living to a ripe old age and fathering a brood of 15 in Alaska.
Oh, really?
And inviting me over for frequent fishing expeditions.
Good luck with that one.
That's what we're counting on.
I don't think that's going to happen, but.
Well, Cazzy, I appreciate you coming out. Appreciate talking to you.
You betcha.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
That's the show. Thank you, Cazzy, for coming down and spending time with us. Isn't he just a great bearded Buddha, a behemoth of a man, and a tender, soft heart? Really, I had a great time with him, and I had a great time with you. I hope the feeling was mutual. If it was, check us out on Patreon. I said it before. I'll say it again. Give while you can, and I will continue talking to people while a camera films me. Could there be a greater calling in life? I don't know. I'll get back to you next time.